So now we're going to get your Bluehopper MR16 setup up and going. The first thing we've got to do is to download the app. You'll notice on the screen there is an iPad. That is because the BR installer tool that we'll be using to install these light bulbs is an iOS only app. The client version that your end users will be using to interact with their new system will be in iOS or Android. Both either are good. So we're going to go ahead and open up the App Store on the bottom. We're going to do a quick search for BR installer. And you'll notice that it comes up on the screen. It's the kind of teal and green icon with the light bulb tree looking thing. You'll go ahead and get that app, download it. When you download it and open it the first time, it will ask you to create an account. So go ahead and use your email address and a password to create your installer account. All of your installs will be under this one account. All right, so we'll move on to the next step in the process. So the BR installer tool is installed on my system here. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. It's going to generally come up with the login screen, but I've already logged in. And it's showing me that I have no MeshTech devices yet. This is to be expected because we haven't done any of the pairing or onboarding process. Everything in this app is done with either the 3-line hamburger menu in the upper left or what we affectionately call the blue squishy in the upper right. So the upper right blue squishy is where all of the networks live. These are all of your individual installs. You definitely want to get in the habit of not using main for anything. Every single time you do an install, it should have its own brand new network. So we're going to go ahead and hit the plus sign here. It's going to ask us to name our new network. We're just going to call this one MR16 demo. And we're going to go ahead and add. You'll notice that it now put this MR16 demo one on my lengthy list of other projects. So we're going to go ahead and select that one. Again, it brings us back to the no MeshTech devices found yet, but again, that's to be expected because we do not have any bulbs. So let's go take a look at how we add a bulb. All right, so now we're going to take a look at how to pair a light bulb to the app. So I'm going to open my BlueRoots installer app, BR installer. Remember, we just created that MR16 demo network, which is where we are. So we're just going to let it sit open like that, just so you guys can see the process. On the smaller screen here, I have a light fixture that I found in the miscellaneous bucket of fixtures we have at work, but it does work. So then we have the basic MR16 style Bluehopper bulb. That's just going to get plugged in like you'd expect. Set back in there. Pretty basic, normal. I have it on a very simple transformer here. So you'll notice once I turn the transformer on, the bulb's going to come on. It's going to do a color fade. So it'll do the red, green, the blue, and then it will stop at a warm white. You will also notice that in the right-hand screen there, we have a little banner that popped up on the bottom that says, hey, we've detected an unpaired MeshTech device near you. Would you like to pair them now? We're going to go ahead and hit pair in the bottom right corner. It's going to search. It always takes it a little while, but it is attempting to find all of the MeshTech devices in the area. Now you'll notice that the bulb on the screen turned blue. You'll also notice that it put a little picture of an MR16 in blue on the top of the iPad. If we touch this, you'll notice that it blinks. That's to indicate that the blue one is the one that we think it is, and we're going to drag this down to select group. Now we're going to let it go. We have no groups made up in this system yet, so we're going to go ahead and select a group. We're going to add a group with the plus sign. Whatever you want the group name to be, you can break these up logically. Big oak tree in the front yard, or house left, or whatever you want the groupings to be. All of the devices that you put in the group will act the same way, so it'll become like one unit. We're we're just going to call this one tree, which is kind of ironic because I have no trees here. All right, so we're going to add it to tree. We're going to hit add at the bottom. Now you'll notice that the color went back to a warm white. The adding will sit there. It'll ask for the type. This is a basic MR16, so we're just going to hit done at the bottom. And it's going to loop us back to this page. The reason it loops us back is if we had multiple bulbs plugged in at a time, it would loop us back into here so that we could grab the next bulb and assign it to its corresponding group. So right now we're just going to go ahead and hit done. It'll always attempt to connect to the devices. When it finds them, it'll give you the little on-off slider, and you can start messing with things. In this section, we're going to go through basic usage of your Bluehopper MR16 bulbs. This will apply to either the BR installer app or your client's BlueRoots app. Either one. It's pretty much the same process. So on the screen, we're in our network, that MR16 demo network we created. You'll see the little on-off slider in the corner there. If I put my finger on the center, drag it over, let it go, the light kicks on. I just threw it against my wall in the office here, but at least to be able to see what colors and things it's doing without blinding the camera again. All right, so in the upper left corner there, the 3-line hamburger menu, this is where all of your choices are available. We'll do colors. This is a big color wheel. Wherever you put that translucent circle and let go, that's where it's going to stay, and your colors will shift. And everything in the group that we're interacting with will act the same. So if we decide it's blue. Now, whatever color you set it to, when your transformer turns off at night and then back on the next day, that's the color that it's going to come back to without any additional scheduling stuff. All right. In the whites category here, that's the second one down. This is where you're going to have a couple of different options for white. Most of these are for other products like the Mesh Tech Nugget Worm, that kind of thing, but we should be able to do a couple of the other various colors of white because this is an RGBW fixture, so it does have a decent white in it. So there's a few different versions, variations of that, depending on what you like. The one at the bottom that says MR16 Warm, that's going to be your more typical warm white color, which looks weird on my gray wall, but I swear that's the right warm white color. All right, next moving down the list here, the RGBW sliders. If you have a very particular color scheme that you want, you can use the 0 to 255 values here on each of those 4 colors, the red, the green, blue, white. So there's white in here. And then don't forget the brightness slider on the right there. There we go. So you can kind of mix and match a color. If you're trying to match like an RGB color value, you can do that. You can also save a swatch. You'll see the little circles on the bottom left corner there. So if you come up with a color that's like the best thing ever, you can add swatch down there. And then you'll see that that little color pops up. And that's a color that you can then recall just by touching the screen circle. All right, we'll go back with the arrow. 3-line hamburger menu. The next one down is, usually use the effects. These are preset kind of color palettes, similar to some of the interior lighting products. If you click on them, they'll play back their color fades, changes, all that kind of stuff. So this is like a slow, and green is purples, teals, the aurora. Candlelight looks pretty cool if you've got like a Halloween display or something. You want like a little flicker. But these all do different things. You can play around with those. Rainbow's kind of cool. All right, so that's pretty much your basic color selection options. Generally, when you get a fresh bulb right out of the box, there's a pretty good chance that there's a firmware version that needs to be updated, we'll go ahead and show you how to do that. The cool thing about how these bulbs function, when they create that mesh network amongst themselves, they will pass the firmware along as well. So we only have to update one bulb in the entire system and it will slowly replicate its way through. It's pretty cool. But we'll show you how to do the first bulb in that system. So we're going to hit the 3-line hamburger menu in the upper left. Down in the bottom, it says firmware updates. And remember, this is the BR installer tool. The firmware updates will not show up on the client app. We're going to hit next. Again, it's going to search for all of the objects in the area that may need a firmware update, including our bulb, which we named Tree, and it's the first bulb in the group, so it's Tree 1. So we're going to go ahead and update. There's usually a little bit of a pause around 20%. That's normal. You'll also notice that the bulb changes to a pulsing orange, yellow, yellowish orange, whatever you want to call it. That means that it is the one receiving the firmware update. If you've got a group of these lights going all at the same time, when one is pulsing orange, you'll generally see one that's green. The green one is the one that's sending the firmware to the pulsing orange. Once the update is complete, you'll notice that the bulb stops pulsing. It goes back to its warm white, and the screen notifies you that the firmware was successfully updated. We're going to go ahead and close. And then close the firmware update section, and we're back to here. So let's talk a little bit more about the mesh network and how that functions. A mesh network is a network made up of multiple devices that all communicate amongst each other. So the more nodes you have in that network, the stronger the communication is, because there's multiple pathways to get from one place to another. So let's take a look at the example we have up on the screen. The first tree on the bottom right to the second tree. As long as the fixture to fixture distance is about 20 feet or so, that communication should be nice and solid. That second tree can probably talk to the bush, and it can talk to the third tree, and so on. So it'll work its way down the line. If you have a cluster and everything is within 20 feet, you're fine. If you are extending in a long linear format like this, there might be a time where the two nodes are too far apart, where they just don't quite communicate properly, in which case you should look at using a repeater. A repeater is a pretty simple little device. It will connect into the line that powers your fixtures already, and it'll provide an additional node to that network. Repeaters can also help memorize a schedule for a group of MR16s. They can also be used where line of sight isn't necessarily possible, like maybe to bounce around a corner or something along those lines. Alright, that should do it for our pretty basic overview, and nothing too complicated or crazy, so let us know how it goes. Thanks.